I think there was some learning from the last couple cycles where a lack of a adopted stablecoin somewhat held back the development of the DeFi ecosystem on Cardano. And so this is kind of an effort to remedy that. There's definitely a bias in the blockchain industry for USD pegged stablecoins, but there's all sorts of stablecoins out there. We've already also bridged Circle's Euro peg stablecoin to Cardano. We now have this gold from Tether. You'll also, not be surprised to hear that some of the upcoming ones that we'll be integrating into Cardano include PYUSD. This is that new PayPal USD stablecoin, which has really been gaining traction. So you can expect to see that before too long.
What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. My name's Fareed. Today, I've got the pleasure of sitting down with the CEO of Wanchain, Temujin Louis. We're going to be discussing all of their recent progress, updates, and developments. Without any further ado, let me bring them up now. Good morning, Tem. How are you?
Hi, Fareed. Great to be here. Thanks for having me back. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. First and foremost, congrats on your recent change in position. The last time you were here on the channel, I believe you were the VP of Marketing, and you've now taken over as CEO of Wanchain. How does that feel, man?
Yeah, a lot of pressure, but I'm enjoying it. Learning a lot along the way, but I think it'll be good for the project. We've already made some changes, so things are looking good.
Solid. Happy to hear it. As a part of today's video, we'll be discussing the current state of development and the recent roadmap for Wanchain. We'll also jump into some recent milestones. You guys have also, I believe, released a burn feature, which I'd love to hear a little bit more about and how that plays into the Wanchain ecosystem. And then most notably, there's been the addition of new assets, right? So there's now the availability of Tether Gold as well as Dapp being bridged to Cardano. And then there's a recent graphic released about sort of the impact that Wanchain has had within Cardano, which I personally would love to jump into. As we get close to maybe closing things down, I'd like to discuss liquidity, Project Catalyst, and then take a look at any maybe of your closing thoughts that you'd like to share here with the greater Cardano community. That said, I do want to take an opportunity to quickly just plug in our previous interviews. You've joined me here immediately after actually, you joined me first at the Cardano Summit in 2023, but then you joined me again, I believe, for a stablecoin sort of like lightning talk with other big builders here within the ecosystem. And yeah, I just want to say again, thank you for those collaborations. I'll leave the links to those down below for anybody who wants to get more familiar with you and Wanchain. That aside, it'd be great to maybe get a brief recap of what it is that you actually do, what Wanchain is, and then we'll jump straight into recent upgrades and the current progress on the roadmap.
Sure. Well, thank you for the intro. I definitely have enjoyed all our talks so far, and I'm sure this one will be a good one too. For those who are not aware, Wanchain is the longest running interoperability project in the crypto space. We launched officially back in 2017. Maybe the roots, the seeds were planted a little bit before that, but we've been around for quite a long time. And interoperability here, it started off just moving basically assets from one chain to another, because as you all know, blockchains themselves can't natively speak to one another. And this has kind of expanded over the years to include just kind of more arbitrary data. So kind of abstracting away from tokens, and really what's actually going on, even in a token transfer, is just data from chain A to data to chain B. So that's really what Wanchain is all about. We're working kind of for a grander vision, I would say, of having all the different chains in the space, whether it's EVM or non-EVM, be kind of seamlessly interoperable. This is the grand vision, of course. Today, things are not quite so seamless. You still need to interface pretty directly with third-party projects like Wanchain to have any kind of semblance of interoperability, but we're making a lot of progress. It's night and day compared to when we started. And we're heavily invested in kind of making this vision a reality. For Cardano specifically, we launched just over a year ago, and in that time, we've gained some pretty good traction. I think rightfully so. When we first launched, there was a lot of skepticism about bridging, just generally. I know the Cardano ecosystem had experienced the Nomad bridge hack and all the kind of negative consequences that came out of that. But I think over the last year, Wanchain has shown that we're, in the Cardano ecosystem for the long run. We've engaged directly with a lot of Cardano projects. I myself have, hung out in different community discords, answering people's questions, and we've kind of seen that reflected in the adoption of the bridge. So it's quite well adopted these days. In the past year or so, I'm sure we'll get into it a little more specifically, but we've moved, somewhere around $25 million of assets to and from Cardano, and between Cardano and more than a dozen different chains. So now that Cardano is part of our ecosystem, part of the original pitch, I think, when I first came on your call, is that once the heavy lift is really integrating the chain for the first time, and then once it's integrated, it's connected, at least behind the scenes, to all these different networks. So then our different products that we end up launching, they're much easier to kind of include Cardano in those launches, which is what we've been doing with a pretty good tempo of new assets and new projects that we've been launching for Cardano.
That's a really great intro. And for anybody who wants to find out more about Wanchain and their offerings, the official website is available at wanchain.org. As always, links will be left down in the show notes for today's video. Now, I want to take a quick minute just to give you guys a huge congrats here. Looks like you guys have recently integrated a brand new chain, but you guys have also hit a pretty big milestone here. Looks like, let's see here, crossing over 100,000 wallets on the Wanchain L1 blockchain. Do you mind maybe breaking down, the impact of news just like this? And again, there's been a recent integration of a brand new blockchain as well. Like, you guys are continuously developing in all fronts. And I'd love to also jump into the different types of offering that you guys have, because if I'm not mistaken, it's not just traditional bridging. There's also NFT bridging and then Xflow bridges as well. So first off, the milestone, and then maybe second, we'll jump into some of the other offerings that you guys provide.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to notice this. It's been a good year in terms of milestones. Everyone likes these big round numbers. So yes, on the Wanchain L1, we do have our own EVM compatible blockchain. It is relevant to some of our cross-chain products, not all. A lot of our bridges are just direct, but sometimes it's helpful to have an intermediary chain for specific types of products. So we sometimes use the Wanchain L1 for that. But yes, we launched. We hit that milestone, 100,000 wallets. So we're all very happy about that. It followed up on some other big milestones over the past couple of months. We had passed over $1 billion in cross-chain volume and on the cross-chain bridge. And then we've also, like you said, been integrating more and more chains. Today, I think the number is just over 35 different networks, again, both EVM and non-EVM. So the network's growing, the number of users are growing, the usage of the bridge is growing, so everyone's feeling pretty good at Wanchain. And I think you asked about the different types of offerings we do, so that's definitely right. There's a lot of different products that we offer, because ultimately they all just boil down to moving data from one chain to a different chain. But the structure of that data, what that data represents, can be many different things. So the first version of the bridge that we launched, not only to Cardano, but just in our history, that's back in 2018 when we launched our first mainnet bridge connecting Ethereum and the Wanchain L1. We really kind of pioneered something that is pretty everyday today, this lock, mint, burn, unlock mechanism. Specifically, these wrapped assets that I'm sure a lot of your users have heard about, where you lock the native asset and then the bridge itself mints kind of a representation of that asset on another chain. So that was kind of like the first version of the bridge that we launched. But over the years, we've added a lot of different types. We have this Xflows bridges. This is sometimes called the canonical bridge. What it just means is that it's native to native. So this is really useful when an asset exists on multiple chains natively. Probably something that I know has been a big discussion in Cardano, maybe less so in the last month or two, but definitely the past year has been a big topic, was USDC. Is it going to come to Cardano? Because USDC, like USDT, is available all over the place, probably more than a dozen networks. And if you're going to do cross-chain with these types of assets where there is a native version, you don't really want a wrap version of it. If you can have the native one, that's always better. It's a different security profile. It's more in the case of a stablecoin, it's directly redeemable for the fiat currency. You don't have to first pass it through a bridge. So there's a lot of advantages. And that's basically what these Xflows are. It's these native to native cross-chain transactions. And this uses a different mechanism under the hood than the previous token bridges I described. And we've also kind of expanded the definition of native assets to include native equivalent assets, just to make the product a little more useful and appealing. So this will cover things like the version of ETH that is minted by an official L2 bridge. So if the bridge itself is run by the layer 1 blockchain, we'll treat it as an equivalent asset to native. So these types of assets are supported on Xflows as well. And then I'm looking at the screen here. NFT bridges up next. This is the mechanism similar to the aforementioned bridges, except you're dealing with an NFT in this case. You have the original one. There's all sorts of metadata attached to it. You lock the original, and then the bridge not only has to mint a wrapped token on the destination chain, but it also has to make sure that the metadata is identical. And if there are changes to the metadata on either side, primarily on the source side, then that it can update the metadata, in real time, essentially, or near real time on the destination chain. So there's these little kind of intricacies, and not listed here because it's really more in a beta right now. But we've been working hard on our cross-chain message passing protocol. I think this is also something that we've spoken about on this show, as well as a few other places. And this is functional. There's projects building in it with it right now, but we haven't done the full official launch yet because we're still treating it like a beta. With Wanchain, we're very much very similar to Cardano, where we measure 1 million times and then cut once. So we sometimes roll these products out over time just to make sure that we're very, 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 very confident in their security before we really shine a bright light on it.
And security is probably a good sort of maybe topic to just sort of hammer in on here. As you rightfully mentioned, the conversation was really, really hot around stablecoins a few months back. And a part of that, I think, was around security, right? So wrapped assets don't always seem to get as much love as native assets, which you've mentioned are sort of like the bread and butter for the Xflows. Do you mind just sort of reiterating Wanchain's long track record for being secure, because I think that's a piece that doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to toot our own horn, so to speak. But yeah, we've been around longer than any other bridge in the space. Like I said, we officially launched the project 2017 and got to work, and our first mainnet bridges launched in 2018. So we've been up and operational for 6 years or so. And in all that time, we've not had any downtime. We've not suffered any hacks or security incidents. A lot of that, I think, is really just in our approach to building. We build very carefully. We take a very kind of academic and R&D approach to building, and we test things rigorously. They get audited by third-party projects. And so, of course, we're also not so foolish to say that it's unhackable. Nothing is, especially in blockchain. But it's something that is always front of mind for us, and that we put really as our number one priority. We've had opportunities in the past, one could say, to maybe get a little like a growth hack, but if it comes at kind of having to sacrifice a bit of the security aspect, we always say no. It's, for us, it's not worth it. It's kind of our bread and butter right now is our approach to building and the security profile that we can offer. It is kind of tricky to speak to end users about this. With developers, sometimes it's a little bit easier, but there's like so many moving pieces, not only in bridges but in fiat-based stablecoins and blockchain generally, to really kind of have accurate assessments of a particular product's risk profile, can be a little bit tricky. And bridges themselves, can mean so many different things. Yes, you can talk about wrapped assets. That definitely adds an additional consideration to the risk profile because it's just a representation of a native asset. But there are downsides to even just like a direct mint of a fiat-backed stablecoin. Some of it's off-chain, so you don't think about it, or the end user might not think about it kind of day to day. But there's a risk profile associated with having to be the entity that's in charge of the fiat currency, the funds and the bank account, and all the kind of different regulations that you have to abide by to kind of continue to operate. What happens if a bank account gets frozen? There's these types of considerations. And oftentimes, wrapped assets get placed. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself too, just as we're speaking casually, but going like wrapped asset versus a native asset. And while there's obviously important differences there, they usually center around who mints that asset. From a technical point of view, they're very, very, very similar. If you have a wrapped asset, you can use it exactly the same way that you can a native asset, and you really just need to think more so about the risk profile of the act of minting. Put it that way.
Nicely stated. And I think I've told you this in even our first interviews. The way that you speak, the way that you present is really, really it's unfounded because, again, number one, not only your CEO, you're making time to jump onto creators channels, but then you have a really good way of explaining things, which is why I really enjoyed having you on that stablecoin chat a few months back. Again, I'll leave the link to that down below, but you raised a lot of really solid points, especially about fiat-backed stablecoins, which at the time were sort of like the craze, right? And to be fair, while they are great, they also have their own inherent risks in the third-party custodian, which technically is the bank that's supposed to be holding whatever reserves should be backing those assets. So I don't think we've ever come to a final conclusion as to like what type of stablecoin works best. I know that, Algorithmic has had some troubles. Fiat has had some troubles. And of course, there's third party or counterparty risks. And then there's also over collateralized, which Jed is sort of really, I think, laying the foundation on that perspective or on that front. But that's not for this conversation. Today, we're solely focusing on Wanchain. Again, the amount of support that you guys have added to your platform, I think, is really awesome to see here. I do want to pull this up for the viewers just so they can sort of better understand how much Wanchain has really done here across multiple networks. So I'll pull that up here in just a minute, but you guys have also really hit a milestone here with the Cardano bridge being open for 1 year. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there's been over 26 Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's currently trading at nearly $58,000, $59,000 right now, which have been transferred through the bridge. There's been over, if I'm not mistaken, wait, let me make sure I'm reading that correctly. It says Cardano USDC is at 15 million. That appears to be 15 million. And then USDT over 5.5 million. Anything that you maybe want to highlight when it comes to seeing those stats there for assets being moved to and from in the course of what is, people think it's a long time. I think it's a pretty short time, only a year.
Yeah, I think, it's surprising how quickly a year can go by. It seems like just yesterday we were first getting acquainted with everyone in the Cardano community. But after a year, we looked back and I looked back and, I think definitely very successful year, very successful integration for us, but still lots of room to grow. When you're looking at these numbers, again, I think it's back to what is a bridge supposed to do? Definitely if we're looking at purely to the benefit, quote unquote, of the Cardano ecosystem, what we want to see is, okay, it allows, assets from other chains, liquidity from other chains to be brought into the Cardano L1. But from a bridge builder's perspective, like us, it's really about two-way flows. We want it to be as easy to come in and to come out and really kind of have these different networks, Cardano, Ethereum, Polkadot, what have you, ultimately, and again, we're not there, this is the grand vision, but ultimately be able to operate as just kind of one meta network, one meta blockchain network, where data can pass seamlessly. So these numbers, this represents the total flow in and out of these assets, because we judge the health of the integration not solely by the number of assets that are minted, but the activity that is going in both directions, and that's really the sign of a healthy bridge for us. So these numbers are accurate as of that time of publication. They're probably a little bit higher now. And yeah, it's been a good year. I think I would probably want to shout out, Liquid Finance has been a big driver of this success, I would say. They were very, very early at adopting these assets. They saw the need for having, access to these blue chip stablecoin and blue chip asset liquidity from other chains, just kind of having those connections in place. They saw the value in that and jumped on really, really early. So that definitely did a lot of the heavy lift. And then also MinSwap, more recently, especially with the launch of their stable swap, supported the USDC, and that has had a positive impact as well. And while I say definitely it was a successful year, there's still room to grow. We definitely would like to see not only these assets, but really kind of any assets from any chain come into Cardano and really be supported by basically as many as the protocols as possible where it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for the viewers taking a look here, 30 plus networks, which are basically all talking to each other through Wanchain. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Cardano has access to each and every single one of these, but Cardano does have pretty wide access here. And let me see if I can actually pull it up. So we've got some of the different assets that can now sort of be traded from Cardano to other ecosystems. So obviously we've got the big dogs like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, Tron, of course, Wanchain, and Base. That's sort of been like the latest, blockchain that everybody's talking about. And then take a look at the actual Cardano native assets, right? So at the very top there, we've got things such as DAI, USDT, USDC. We've got the Dean token. We've got Katsuki. We've got, I believe, even some of the meme coins like Hosky also being included. So maybe this is a really good segue to like let the community know, maybe if they're a token holder or a project, how do they go about voicing to Wanchain that like they want their token to be supported cross-chain?
Sure. And let me just add one clarification as I answer your question. Those 30 plus networks, it's more like 35 now. Cardano is connected to all of those. You can think about it as kind of a infrastructure and application layer. So at the infrastructure layer, it is connected to all those chains. We can pass data from any of those chains you showed on screen to Cardano, and in most cases, vice versa. I say most cases because some of those chains have no smart contracts. So that's not like a realistic outcome. but it is connected at an infrastructure level to all of these networks. Now, when you think of something like the token bridge, this is more like a application layer or a product layer. So the reason why there's this subset of chains and assets is mostly arbitrary. It's kind of decided by business and marketing. There was a demand, for example, for USDC, so we kind of made it available. But the same can be true for basically any of the assets on any of these 30 plus networks that are on screen right now. So Cardano is already connected to all of these. Now, for any kind of viewers who are listening to this video, it's very, very easy to get a token or a coin or an asset supported on the Wanchain Bridge. You just have to reach out to us. You can message us on Twitter, on our Telegram community, and we'll just make it happen. We don't charge integration fees or anything like that. It can be your own project's token, or it can be just another token on another chain that you think should be available on Cardano, or even vice versa. It could be something on Cardano that you'd like to be able to have access to on another chain. And then we'll handle the technical side. It's not zero work to kind of add a new token, but it's very minor compared to integrating a brand new chain. So the heavy lift is already done. The infrastructure level, that's the heavy lift. And then besides that, it's all pretty straightforward. We help both big and small projects. So don't feel shy if you just have a little hobby project and you think it would be cool to have it available on multiple chains. We're happy. We think interoperability is for everyone, both blue chips like USDC, also memes like Hosky, also things like Dean, whatever that is. Kidding. And then, really for everyone. So just reach out, don't be shy, and we can get it done for you.
Solid. And I'd love to maybe get a link that I can leave down below for the viewers that do want to get in touch with you. All right. The next thing I want to talk about, because I feel like even though we've been chatting for quite a bit now, I haven't moved into the next topics. We've got the convert and burn, and then we'll jump into assets that have just been added specific to Cardano, which include Tether Gold, and I mentioned Dapp. For anybody who isn't aware, I know this feature went live not too long ago. Could you break down sort of what convert and burn is, how it works, and how this benefits the entire Wanchain ecosystem?
Sure, yes. As you can probably tell from our few conversations, Wanchain has a lot of different irons in the fire. They're building things over here, building things over there. And over the years, we did notice that increasingly these different projects that we were building were becoming more and more disparate from one another. And so convert and burn is our solution to this problem. It really kind of reunifies all the different components of the Wanchain ecosystem and really reinforces it as kind of one synergistic whole. That's kind of conceptually what it is. What it specifically is that as people use the bridge. There are small fees associated with using the bridge. And then these assets that we're collecting as fees on all these different chains. So we're collecting BTC, we're collecting ETH, USDT, USDC on dozens of chains. They all get converted to Wancoin, which is the coin of the Wanchain layer 1 that's used to pay for gas and things like that and to stake into our nodes, et cetera, et cetera. So we're collecting all these fees. It gets converted to Wancoin, and then it gets automatically distributed to 5 different end goals, let's put it that way, that are all to the benefit of the entire Wanchain ecosystem. We get 40% of it goes to the ongoing operations of the Wanchain bridge. Wanchain, we try to make it as friendly as possible to use. So when users use the bridge, you really just have to click one button, basically just sign the transaction on the source chain, and then everything else just kind of happens over the next few minutes. Behind the scenes, though, the bridge is incurring the gas fees on the source chain. Nothing is free in blockchain. So, if we're going from Ethereum to Cardano, the user signs a transaction on Ethereum. And then on the Cardano side, though, there's still some costs associated with minting the wrapped USDC. And the bridge just incurs these costs. So that first one is basically to reimburse and ensure that the bridge can kind of operate sustainably into perpetuity. So that's kind of number one. That's that 40% you have on screen. Or sorry, that's the 30%. Excuse me, 30%. The 40% is the community treasury. This is going to grow over time to allow the Wanchain community, Wancoin holders, to be both proposing and voting on different mechanisms and on how to distribute these funds to what purpose. A kind of a smaller scale of what goes on or what's going to be kind of activated in Chang with the Cardano hard fork and the community treasury. And then you have these 3 10%. 2 of them are for our 2 types of nodes. So we have POS nodes for the Wanchain blockchain, and we also have bridge nodes for the bridge itself. And these both have kind of node operators and delegators, so you can stake to other people's nodes. So this 10% is kind of just to keep them incentivized to continue to secure and continue to operate these 2 major systems of the Wanchain ecosystem. And then the final 10% gets burned. So this is just something that can benefit basically the entire Wanchain ecosystem, anyone who holds Wancoin. Wancoin, since we've been around for so long, we've had actually a very small max supply. And so the idea here is that before too long, the burn will kind of outnumber the emissions, and then Wan can become a truly deflationary asset. And that's kind of just the long-term vision. But basically, this just helps tie together a lot of the different components. So if people are using the bridge, it's a benefit to the Wanchain L1, just kind of put it very succinctly. Basically, the Wanchain L1, the bridge, and the Wancoin kind of all get to benefit from each other's successes. And the final component of this is, since there are fees on the Wanchain bridge, you can receive discounts if you hold Wancoin. So you can receive up to an 80% discount, which is pretty considerable. And all you have to do is hold Wancoin in your wallet, or you can even just take that Wancoin and stake it into one of the into a bridge node. And so you can earn yield on your Wancoin while also enjoying the benefit of the bridge. So really just trying to tie up all the loose ends.
Very, very sort of nice of a, it's like an ecosystem, right? It's like you've taken those fees and you sort of distributed them, and you've incentivized different parties to keep the entire Wanchain ecosystem going. So as you mentioned, node operators, stakers, discounts here, growing the treasury. I really like to hear it. Now you mentioned Wancoin. One thing we haven't touched on is the price of Wancoin. I'm just kidding. As CEO, I know you can't talk about price. I appreciate that very, very much. Let's dive into Cardano specific updates now. So there's been the introduction of a brand new asset, which I actually covered here on my channel not too long ago, which is Tether Gold. Now, a lot of people are familiar with traditional fiat pegged stablecoins or US dollar pegged stablecoins. This appears to be a stablecoin pegged to the value of gold. So for anybody who wants to get exposure to gold relatively quickly, right, they can now pick up this new XAUT token or this Tether Gold token. And you guys have actually taken the time to now bridge this to Cardano. Do you mind discussing why this particular asset? And then I believe there's also Dapp, right, from the Polkadot ecosystem, which has also been added to Cardano. So I'd love to hear about maybe those 2 tokens first, but then also like what additional tokens are you guys thinking about bringing over that really hold a lot of weight, just like these 2 do?
Yeah. So which one to start with? I guess we can start with the Tether Gold. So this is actually a pretty good example of how easy it is to integrate assets with Wanchain. So this was just per request. Someone came up to us, said, we would love to have this on Cardano. This was a project on Cardano. I won't name their name right now, but you can probably guess. Let them, roll out things on their own time frame. But simple as that. They came, they said we think this would be a great benefit to the Wanchain community or to the Cardano ecosystem. What we really want is Cardano to kind of become a home for stablecoins. I think there was some learning from the last couple cycles where a lack of a adopted stablecoin somewhat held back the development of the DeFi ecosystem on Cardano. And so this is kind of an effort to remedy that. And there's definitely a bias in the blockchain industry for USD pegged stablecoins, but there's all sorts of stablecoins out there. We've already also bridged the Circle's Euro pegged stablecoin to Cardano. We now have this gold from Tether, and basically it's just kind of providing more and more stablecoin options to both the projects and the users on Cardano. Users if they just want to hold, and projects, if they want to build things around or build protocols that leverage these assets in some way. You'll also, not be surprised to hear that some of the upcoming ones that we'll be integrating into Cardano include PYUSD. This is that new PayPal USD stablecoin, which has really been gaining traction. So you can expect to see that before too long. And as there's more stablecoins that kind of grow in prominence, I guess that would be a good measure in terms of the demand to have that on Cardano. You can expect to see them on Cardano as well. So the idea being that you can have all these different stablecoins on Cardano on your favorite chain, because sometimes it's makes you feel good to not have to worry about price fluctuations and just park things in a stablecoin for a little while. Besides that, DOT, similar. DOT's maybe I could say was a little bit of a bigger lift. So, with the Tether Gold, it's coming from an EVM chain at this point for Wanchain, bridging from or to an EVM. Very, very simple. But DOT's not an EVM, so this one was a little bit more of a bigger lift. But again, it came via request from the Cardano community. I guess there had been some other projects who have been exploring getting the DOT community and the Cardano community kind of on the same page, working together. And we had just coincidentally already bridged DOT to some of the EVM chains that we supported. So some of the work was already done, at least I'll just leave it at some of the work was already done. So then we just had to basically complete the lift, make it interoperable with Cardano in terms of registering that DOT asset, bring DOT over to Cardano, and that's now live today. I think the cross-chain volume for this one has been relatively low, but I think that's to be expected so long as it's just users who want to hold. To really kind of see the inflows, you normally need the different kind of DeFi protocols, the DEXs, the lending platforms, to kind of incentivize having those assets on chain. But I guess that's the liquidity issue that we've spoken about before, and I'm sure we'll speak about today as well. Besides that, we have a handful of other kind of tokens that are in the pipeline for Cardano as well. Oftentimes, we'll just also add new routes for existing assets. So, for example, we already do bridge BTC from a few chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum to Cardano. We'll be adding direct routes from Arbitrum and Optimism as well, just to kind of make it as easy as possible for any of the users. One of the things we hope to achieve with interoperability is, really lower the learning curve. And every time you have to kind of start to use a new chain, at least as things exist today, it is a little bit of a pain. And so we just want to make as many routes available as possible so that more than likely, or increase the odds that we'll hit one of the chains that the user is already using. And then it's just an easy kind of one click, now it's on Cardano, rather than being like, okay, how do I set up this wallet? How do I find gas? Where do I get the asset? And kind of all that learning is kind of just taken out of the equation.
Thank you for not only breaking down what's already there, but also highlighting where the future, lies with additional support for new assets. Now, one thing that you just highlighted there, which I think is a really good segue, is liquidity and incentives, right? So you guys released a really solid diagram, which I want to take an opportunity to share with the community, which basically breaks down, from start to finish, how Wanchain has basically helped Cardano and DeFi and all of the different stats that we already discussed as a part of today's video. So this, again, breaks down that entire process. Now, you've mentioned by name, I believe, one protocol, or two protocols, I should say, Liquid and MinSwap. What are sort of the next plans, right, for integrations from Wanchain? And then do you guys plan on having any incentives to draw in even more liquidity than you guys already have in the first year operating the bridge to Cardano? Now, I do want to also preface this by saying it's not your job, right, to get liquidity into ecosystems. You're obviously the bridge builder. It's up to the community to say, hey, we see value in this, so we want to move our assets. But I know that, for example, with platforms like Liquid, given the yields that they're able to provide, it makes this a very lucrative opportunity. Therefore, people do want to move over any of their stable coins if they have them on other ecosystems and basically put them to work. So I'd love to hear, a little bit about what your thoughts are there, understanding that it's not necessarily your job, right, to facilitate liquidity. It's your job to basically make the bridging available and for the community to step in with their own liquidity and make that work.
Yeah, liquidity is always the hardest part, I guess, once the bridge is in place. Ultimately, I think you're right in the sense that there's limited things that Wanchain itself can do. We're not the type of project that's able to just come up and be like, okay, well, here's a spare $100 million we had laying around and we'll just go seed liquidity everywhere. We're not like a VC-backed project in that way, and we don't have, that's just not our way. We like to build infrastructure and then hope that it's useful enough that projects and developers build something useful with it as well. Now, that being said, I think we would all benefit from more liquidity of these assets on the Cardano ecosystem, Wanchain as well. So it's not totally separate from us, and so that's why I think our approach has been to try to collaborate with as many of the different projects as possible. MinSwap, Liquid, they have been great collaborators on this front. And specifically for this, we have, in the last Catalyst proposal, co-sponsored an incentive platform with MinSwap, specifically to build up this liquidity. So there'll be more details shared about what exactly this will look like. But yes, there will be incentives made available to try to encourage the Cardano community to bring in this type of liquidity, because we really do think it would be a benefit for basically everyone. But that's been the basic approach. We've collaborated not only with Liquid and MinSwap, but a few of the other DEXs as well. Behind the scenes, we're working very closely with different kind of entities and projects in the Cardano ecosystem. So I'm sure over the next year, you'll see a lot of announcements that include Wanchain in it as well. And we've also collaborated with different projects like Maestro and Iagon. Those of you who were at Rare Evo recently, you might have seen that the three of us, Wanchain, Iagon, Maestro, we sponsored a hackathon together to try to get developers building with these three different types of platforms kind of all together and see what they could come up with. They came up with some really cool things. Definitely you want to check that out. But it's really about collaboration for us at this stage now that the core infrastructure is in place. And then we're also doing things, whilst I think that we're starting to gain some measure of trust in the Cardano ecosystem, there's still is, some mistrust towards bridges. That's just the reality of the situation. So we're doing things to kind of, we'll never be able to convince 100% of the people, nor is that kind of our ultimate goal. If people leave here thinking that there is no risk associated with bridges, then we've also kind of failed in the other direction. It's really just more so about having, an accurate assessment of what the risk profile is, and just kind of knowing what the risks are when you go into it. But one way that we're kind of addressing that is, whilst the Cardano bridge is already audited, it was audited at launch from Anastasia Labs. We're now working. Again, this was via the Catalyst proposal for a secondary audit of the Wanchain bridge, or Wanchain's Cardano bridge. So that's ongoing as well. And then, we're very much interested in kind of technical innovations. So we've been working since Catalyst 11 with Maestro as well as Anastasia Labs on basically this really cool mechanism. I think we've spoken about it before, but it's almost done now. So I'm really looking forward to having people get their hands on it. But basically allowing people to trigger any kind of on-chain logic on Cardano by signing a single transaction on an EVM wallet. So, it's presented most likely in a MetaMask, but it can be any EVM wallet. You just sign the one transaction, and then it just triggers all sorts of stuff on the Cardano side and returns the output to the EVM chain. The advantage here, we talked about how it is kind of a pain to have to learn a new wallet and kind of all the different pieces you have to have in place to transact. So this is, probably not alone the be all end all of this problem, but it is kind of like a very novel approach to how one can sidestep this problem and then put it in the hands of developers to come up with some really cool things. The demo that we've built is basically a simple asset swap. So USDC to Hosky. The USDC is on an EVM chain because I'm an EVM user, let's say, but Hosky is this really cool meme token and I want to kind of be part of that community, but I don't necessarily have it in me to kind of learn a whole ecosystem just to get a meme coin, for example. And so with this, you just sign the transaction on the EVM chain, then everything happens in the background. The USDC gets bridged over to Cardano. It automatically triggers a swap on MinSwap, for example, USDC for Hosky. Then it brings the Hosky back through the bridge and deposits the wrapped Hosky in the user's EVM wallet. Take a few minutes realistically, but it's just one click. The user doesn't have to kind of fumble through multiple different walls. They just, I want to be part of this project. I want to have some Hosky, and then click, you have some Hosky. And that's a pretty simplified example. Anything you can program onto Cardano can theoretically be triggered via this mechanism that we've built. So should be at least some cool experiments that'll come out of that, I think.
Yeah, you actually jumped straight into the next and the last topic that I had, which was sort of the progress of these different Catalyst proposals. And so I think you've done a really good job there of summarizing sort of the liquidity, that sort of side of things, but then also what you guys are doing here, because indirectly, this does help to make liquidity flow much easier between different ecosystems, as you mentioned, specifically with Ethereum, right? I think they need no introduction. By far, one of the leading blockchains in terms of liquidity, obviously second to Bitcoin. But if we're able to make the bridging process easier, right, by removing a lot of the intermediate transactions from the end user's sort of job, then I think it lowers the barrier and makes people more likely to bridge, which then increases liquidity, right? So I think you guys are doing a really great job. While it may not be, as you mentioned, you guys necessarily seeding liquidity directly, I think that Project Catalyst proposals just like these ultimately get us to that goal, but they just sort of take a different route. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm super excited to see things like this come to fruition. We've also had, I believe it's called Cardano Snap integrated into the NuFi wallet, which allows for Cardano dApps, right, to basically now add support for MetaMask. And when you click on that MetaMask option, it basically then opens up your MetaMask wallet. And then there's this new Cardano Snap application that basically creates a Cardano wallet in the background associated with that MetaMask wallet for you, right? So again, this lowers the barrier for entry, and people from ETH or who hold a MetaMask, which is the biggest wallet on ETH, they no longer have the excuse of saying, oh, this is a Cardano app, I can't interact with it. Now with this new plugin, it makes it that much easier. So with solutions like that, and what you guys are working on with the Wanchain Bridge and the collaboration with Maestro, I think that these things ultimately will provide more liquidity into the ecosystem. It's just not doing it directly by just dropping a ton of money, on one particular asset or two particular assets that might need that liquidity immediately. I mean, Tem, it's always a pleasure having you on here. Again, I know you sort of jumped into that very last piece there. I do want to give you an opportunity to maybe give us some closing thoughts about like Wanchain, the future of Wanchain, or just what your thoughts are generally speaking about just the crypto space, right? You have worked with a lot of big players in this space. Obviously, right now, Wanchain is your focus, but I think you have a breadth of knowledge, and I'd love to hear about, just what your thoughts are there, or if there's anything that we missed about Wanchain specifically that you want to bring to the viewers' attention.
Sure. Yeah. Let me start specifically. One thing that I didn't mention yet is that the NFT bridges will also be coming to Cardano. It was meant to be launched by now, but our original planned in terms of the NFT collection that would be available, that project announced that they're not continuing operations. So we'll be looking for kind of a different centerpiece NFT collection alongside which to launch, because if you launch an NFT bridge without any NFTs, it's kind of pointless. But that tech is also ready. So I guess I'll put a call to action out there. Any of you kind of projects that have NFTs out there, if you have any feelings for wanting to go cross chain, or if you perhaps even have an NFT on a different chain and you want to bring it into Cardano, do feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to have those conversations with you. In terms of the larger thing, I think the industry's in a bit of an interesting place right now. My bias definitely is there's still a lot of improvement left needed for interoperability. At times, I am worried that interoperability will become kind of EVM only. And so it's something that we're very actively fighting against. We work with an organization, the name's going to kind of maybe cut me out at the knees, but the organization's called the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And, Wanchain's VP of Engineering is the head of interoperability work group at the EEA. And we do work there to kind of come up with these industry-wide standards for interoperability, but designed to be compatible with both EVM and non-EVM chains, and specifically Cardano. So in there, we're ensuring that all the solutions that we are building are compliant with the standards that we also are helping with our partners try to develop. There's been really good traction on these so far. We recently gave a presentation to the Bank of England about these interoperability standards, because I think increasingly everyone is realizing, yes, that if the mainstream adoption of blockchain is going to happen, something that I think we all want, interoperability has to be a kind of key component. Without interoperability, it is kind of a little bit hard to imagine the whole world running on blockchain. And so, we've been at this specifically, building interoperability kind of in that fight for 6+ years now. So we're not going anywhere. We've proven our way to survive. We're in good shape. Our kind of network continues to expand, and we're unwavering in that. So we're going to continue to make incremental progress. But we're going to look back. We're going to blink 4 more years, 5 more years are going to pass, and the whole landscape's going to be different. Blockchain hopefully will be in a great place, and everyone will be able to look back and be like, yes, I did have the foresight to see how powerful something like blockchain can be. I had the foresight to understand that there are major downsides if all blockchains are the same, and we want interoperability with different types of blockchains that are good at different types of things. And the path, to the world running on blockchain will be increasingly clear.
Always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Temujin Louis, the CEO. I'm still getting used to it. The CEO of Wanchain. If you guys want to find out more about them, you can head over to the official website, wanchain.org. They're literally building bridges, right? No pun intended, bringing all the different ecosystems together. As he's mentioned, we don't ever want an ecosystem or a blockchain space where everybody's doing the same thing. We obviously have different protocols or different L1s that all do different things very, very well. And their job is to interconnect all of those and to allow for seamless interoperability between all of them. Really great chat here today, Tem. I always appreciate it and look forward to seeing you and the rest of the Wanchain team at the upcoming Cardano Summit taking place again in Dubai. I know last year's was a treat, and I'm sure that this year will be no different. For you, ladies and gentlemen watching at home, if you found any portion of today's interview here with Tem to be of help, if you learned anything along the way, I would appreciate you If you could smash that thumbs up, not only does it help to get this content out to members within Cardano, it also helps to sort of spread the word, right, about what Cardano is doing and how interoperability plays a part here and how Wanchain has contributed to that. Now, if you guys want more of this type of content, consider subscribing to Dapp Central. I aim to provide you guys daily content here, breaking down all of the ins and outs here of Cardano. And then last but not least, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns for me or Tem about any of the topics that we've discussed for today's video, then make sure to leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers, everybody.